Hello po, magandang araw po sa inyo. Welcome to episode 2 of KaiZEN, the Magsanoc podcast. KaiZEN is a word that means continuous improvement. And ako po ang inyong host, Kai Magsanoc. No? Isa lang po akong dating full-time journalist and I thought I love getting to know people, sharing their stories, especially those stories that can inspire all of us. All right. So for today, we are at episode 2. Thank you for those who tuned in last week for our first ever episode. That was Music Monday with Atticus King. Today we have it's Wonder Women, also because, at 43, I still collect toys. And aside from my Darna toys, I have a lot of Wonder Woman toys. Um, and as a woman, I know how hard it can be when you are trying to just make it through. Either living the life that you dream of while also fulfilling your obligations as a woman, either as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter, as a sister, or whatever it is you feel your purpose is. So for today, our first ever guest here on our Wonder Women episode is for me a real life Wonder Woman. I saw her in action. I was just at her event last Saturday. Was that last Saturday or 2 Saturdays ago? At Kilyawan Farm Resort, a family owned resort in Ibaan, Batangas. And today, before we send her off to back to Italy tomorrow, we thought of featuring her because communication is indeed super important. It can, words can make, words can also break, not just relationships, but also dreams and futures. So, communication is the basic foundation. Okay. So, please join me in welcoming communication coach, Miss Alexandra Medrano Ganzon.
Hi, Kai. Thank you so much for inviting me to your podcast. Hello to everyone. Magandang araw po.
Thanks, Alex. I couldn't think of a better first guest for Wonder Women. Again, may disclaimer po kami, no? So, KaiZEN is a new podcast. And are we technically equipped with the latest state of the art equipment? Not yet. So, if anyone would like to collaborate with us, we're so open. Just reach out to us. Alex, how are you today? How are things there in beautiful Ibaan, Batangas?
Thank you. I'm doing well. I have to say mixed emotions because, like you mentioned earlier, this is my last full day. I'm going back to Italy tomorrow. So, even after being away for 18 years, talagang every time babalik ako doon, I'm leaving my family here. Ano na naman, it's always very difficult, because to me, the Philippines is always home. And then today yon, ang lakas-lakas pa ng ulan. So parang, I'm trying to stay positive, pero hindi nakikisama yung panahon as of now.
Well, thanks for that, Alex. Well, that's one of your superpowers, I think. Staying positive and staying classy and elegant. One of the two of the things I love about having met you during this visit.
Thank you.
Okay, so what we want to do is not just to share your story, but also add value to your
Mhm.
life since you are our first Wonder Women guest, and we want people to know what you
Okay.
do so that they can also reach out to you, right? In case they need help, not just on a personal capacity, but for their businesses, their companies,
Yes.
no? So please tell us, Alex, what is a communication coach? What exactly does a communication coach do?
Okay. So first of all, thank you. I feel very honored to be your very first guest here at Wonder Women. So a communication coach basically is someone who supports you leverage your communication skills. And that means it can be for any area within your personal sphere or your professional sphere. Because like you mentioned earlier, Kai, communication is a foundation skill, um, whether or not, regardless of the industry that you work in, you are going to need your communication skills, especially now. Some people think that with the dawn of technology with AI, they're going to eventually, threaten communications. But actually, it's the exact opposite, because more than ever, as human beings, we are called to communicate better, because otherwise we're just going to sound standard, and we're just going to be templates and machines and data. And that's not what relationships are built on. Relationships are built on connection. And to be able to connect, you have to be able to communicate. So basically, as a communication coach, and I'll speak for myself because I know there are a lot of communications coaches out there, my goal is to help people use their communication skills to the best of their abilities so that they're able to express themselves better. It's really just that simple. I'll go into this further later, but just to keep things simple, my main objective is to be able to help people express themselves better so they can step up their game, whether that's again personally or professionally, by leveraging their communication skills.
Yeah, you're right. No, you think that with technology and AI, communication is easier for people. It's actually added a layer of complexity, right? I mean, if you're not
Yes.
an emoji user, that's an issue for some people. If you don't
Yes.
end an email with a smiley, for example, parang, ha, umaway na yata tayo. Am I getting fired? Alam mo yun?
Exactly.
Parang, so that's how powerful words are, right? You actually
Yes.
affect the well-being of the people that
Yes.
you're communicating to
Yes.
and communicating with. So it's important, and sabi nga nila, it's not just what you say, but it's also how you say it, right? So
Absolutely.
when you say it through the small screen of a chat or an SMS or a cold email page, right? How do you do that? So I think it's even more important what you're doing is now. And speaking of what you're doing now, it's easy to see, right? So Alex is very classy. That's because she has a background in fashion. Di ba? Good taste, right, guys? Yun. So maybe tell us, Alex, what brought you to this point, right? You're living in Italy. Why are you in
Yes.
communication? Parang people might think there's so many things you can do there. The industries that
Right.
industry Italy is known for, but why communication? What is your story?
Okay. So, as you mentioned, I actually originally went to Italy. This is back in 2005. Okay. To take up my master's in fashion merchandising and marketing. So I was also very much interested in fashion. And I realized, back then we didn't have fashion schools here in the Philippines yet. So I said, I'm going to specialize and go there. So with that, I started working in fashion. So I was working for Cheruti in their sales office. And then for 5 years, that was my first job. And then when I moved back to Florence, I was working for Guess Handbags, this time in the product development and quality control department. Then when I decided to become a mom, this is in 2015, that's when the major shift happened. Okay. I realized that my work environment was actually very hostile to new moms. At that point, I had to make a decision. I said, do I want to spend the rest of my coming days as a new mom, always having to justify myself because I have to leave work early? Of course, I mean, the law protects us from these things. I mean, there are provisions. And I said, is this going to be my life for the next years? Because honestly, I don't want it. I want to have a very positive outlook about becoming a new mom. It was such an important change for me. So I told myself, okay, you know what? Even if I came to Italy specifically for this, I am going to have to pivot, and I'm going to have to find something that's going to allow me to become a very hands-on mom. Also because in Italy, hindi naman uso yung mga yaya. So I had to really build my stamina for all that. And I told myself, isa lang yung priority ko, and that is to have the same vacation period as my daughter when she starts going to school. Because in my mind, it's very important for me that we come home to the Philippines during school break, because I want her to get to know and to really live her Filipina side. So at that point, I said, okay, the only industry that's going to allow me to do that is education. Honestly, Kai, I was telling you this before, no, I wasn't really attracted to the idea of becoming an English teacher. That's what everyone was pushing me to do there. They said, you know what, you speak English well, why don't you just become an English teacher? And I said, yeah, first of all, I
Yeah.
hate grammar. I hate spelling. I was forced by my mom to do, to compose essays over summer. It was not a happy memory for me. But I told myself, you know what, it could lead to something. So sige na lang, sabak. And as a mom, you would know that, we're so willing to do everything, right? To be able to spend as much time with our kids. So even if I didn't really know where that was going, I told myself, okay, I'll do it. I'll get myself certified. So I got my certification to be able to teach English as a foreign language. And then I started working for language schools because since my degree is not in education, I couldn't go into the public schools. So I started doing that. And this is 2019, okay? 2020, I was working, I started the year working in three different schools at the same time, private schools, language schools. And then Italy went on lockdown in March. So parang ako, okay, now what? I was just getting warmed up. 3 months into the job, biglang nagsara lahat. Buti na lang, I'm not gonna call myself tech savvy because parang that's a little too much. But I'm comfortable with technology. Also because of some people, if Joselle's watching this, she's like, no, you are not
Yeah,
tech
I
savvy.
was thinking of Giselle.
Okay, parang nalilito-lito pa ako dun sa dun sa PowerPoint. So at that point, I told myself I'm going to take a course on how to teach English as a foreign language virtually. So I wanted to understand what it was like to keep student engagement online because at that point nobody knew how long the lockdown was going to last. So I said I have to adapt. About that same time, and that was the time I became a content junkie. I just threw all my energy towards learning new skills, upgrading, because I told myself this is my chance. I mean, that was also my coping mechanism, honestly, because that was such a difficult period for me in my private life, and the effect of, wow, not being able to step out of the house. Suddenly, me, my husband, and Maya, we were all sharing that small space 24 by 7. That was not easy for me. So I needed to channel my energy somewhere. That time, when one of the webinars, I heard a speaker from Cambridge say, if you're teaching English, you have to understand that you're not teaching just any other language. You're actually teaching a global skill. But for you to be able to do that, you have to specialize. You can't teach general English. You have to be able to tell people, okay, I'm going to teach you a specific skill, and from this program, from after working with me, you're going to be able to do this. So you have to show them that there is a real transformation there. And that to me was a light bulb moment. I told myself, okay, this is an idea that I can definitely work with. So from there, again, more courses. I had to learn how to eventually get my own clients because up until that point, I had to depend on the language schools and sila yung kukuha ng estudyante, but it wasn't sustainable. So I told myself, you know what? I'm going to take my chances. I resigned from all those language schools. I got myself a license to be able to practice as a freelancer, which would then allow me to reach out and get my own clients. So that is how the whole communication journey started. One more important detail. I also understood that this was what I wanted to do because when I was still teaching for one of those language schools, I had this student. He was, I think, in his 50s. Okay, he's a mural artist. And the curriculum they gave me was, the standard, okay, talk about the British monarchy, talk about football. It was very British culture centric. And at a certain point, I told him, you know what? I said, I'm not comfortable talking about these things anymore. Why don't you tell me what you need English for? Why are you even restudying English? Because he had already taken his certification years before. And he told me, Alex, I actually have a very important client based in Australia. When he calls, whether that's a phone call or a video call, I have a difficult time understanding him. It's one thing if I see him face to face, but even then he wasn't very confident. But he said, even more so. I said, you know what? That's a starting point. Let me work on that. So I now know that the client, he was going to interface with somebody from Australia. So I knew the accent. I knew what the media was. It was going to be video call or phone call. The next lesson I prepared, it was super tailor made. Like, how will you do a presentation, okay, to someone who is, going to join you, maybe just via video. So ganon. And he was so happy with that lesson. He said, wow, I can apply this right away. And I was like, yes, you can. I mean, you can take this lesson, customize it and then use it. It's not something like, Okay, so today we learned about, I don't know, another British museum or the British cuisine, and I don't know when you're gonna use that language. And to me, that was like, oh, okay, this is what I want to do. This is exactly what I want to do. So very specific language, very specific communication skills, designed with your context in mind. So that's why it's very personalized.
That's great. Kasi that means that you're really adding value. You're really helping your students with accomplishing a goal, no, that could affect
Yes,
their lives.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, so I know that buti na lang, all the hindi naman buti na lang, pero everyone we meet as a teacher
Hmm.
and as a woman in the workplace, you think that it's just the men giving you a hard time. And sadly, not always. Sometimes it's the other it's
Absolutely.
the
It's
other
it's sad.
right? It's sad. But
Yes.
you will meet your queens, you meet your fellow queens and you lift each other up. But there are those who are not, just not one of us. The workplace, Alex, is an important, maybe place to start where,
Hmm.
kasi like, you shared your story and then how you added value to the life of this one student when you designed a very specific class for his goal. So at least,
Hmm.
diba, that would affect nga his life eh. The workplace is, we spend 8 hours a day of our lives in the workplace,
Yes.
sometimes more if we have to commute. And regardless, well, if it's face to face or it's virtual, it's, I think, equally exhausting because people think that people who work from home don't get exhausted too. It can be difficult, guys, if you don't have a
Yes.
place to escape, right?
Right.
You can't say I'm gonna take a break. When you leave your seat, you're doing a chore for someone else.
That's
So
true.
anyway, workplace, and then boundaries, right? Let's start there. I really want to talk about family communication, but that will be a different podcast, I guess, with Alex. A
Okay.
different. That's a no, that's a Pandora's box.
Yes,
That's a
yes,
rabbit
it
hole,
is. Yes.
right? Family communication. Yeah. So let's stick with the workplace. Alex, I know you also have an experience with boundaries, right? Or
Yes.
boundaries being necessary in the workplace. How do you communicate boundaries without offending people, especially you're Filipino? You know what the Filipino culture is like.
Right.
So how do you do it? Kasi a lot of people keep quiet because they're afraid of sila na yung dehado, sila pa yung
Mhm.
nahihiyang
Sila pa yung
magsabi no.
nahihiya, oo.
Baka
Yes.
Pinoy, 'di ba?
Oo.
Mamamatay ka
That's
na,
true.
naka-smile ka pa rin. Sure, let's do this.
Yes, service with a smile talaga, 'di ba?
Wait, but how do I say na, "I'm sorry, I can't," or maybe,
Yes,
"Please not after work hours," or "Not on a
right.
weekend, not on a holiday." How do you do that and
Yes.
not offend people?
Okay. Yeah, interesting Kai, you mentioned Filipino kasi because that's actually half of it, right? The way we manage our communication when it comes to communicating our boundaries is so heavily influenced by our cultural roots. We give a lot more importance to the collective. We're so respectful of hierarchies to the point na isasakripisyo natin yung sarili nating well-being. But the thing is, in the long run, that's really not a good thing because yun nga, you go about life feeling, okay, ako na lang magpapasensya, ako na lang uunawa, ako na lang, I'll just, parang, I'll just accommodate. And that's not good because, number one, it's not good for us because it really shrinks us. I mean, that's doing things at the expense of your own self-respect and self-integrity, and it does affect you whether or not you want to admit it because again I have my own personal experience about this. I allowed myself with no boundaries talaga. I was working for Chiruti, and like I told you, for 2 years I allowed myself to be ordered about by a former colleague because I told myself, this is beyond me. It wasn't. And what that created in me was that sense of ganito na lang ako kaliit. I shrank myself so much. It's not, number two, it's not healthy for the people around us because then they'll go on life thinking that it's okay to take advantage of people because that's what it is. If you don't take a no for an answer. So how do you communicate boundaries? To me, it's simple. It's first of all, respect should be at the base of everything. And that respect has to be both ways. But first, think about your self respect. So, what is acceptable to you? So, if you say, yes, let's say, very common example. Can you come to work at, on a Saturday? Or first, you have to know that you have an option. Second, if you want to say yes, okay, if you realize it's urgent, but you say upfront, yes, I can come, but only for, and then put your foot down 1 hour, 2 hours at this time. And then you shouldn't feel, and I know this is not easy, especially for most of us, but
Mm-mm.
it's important that you communicate at the beginning. Okay, I'm only going to be available from this time to this time. Boom. You
Mm-mm.
shouldn't even feel like you have to explain why, because when if it's a Saturday, if it's a holiday or whatever, and something out of the ordinary is being asked of you, then
Right.
you shouldn't even have to feel like you have to explain. So there, to me, it's really the basis of everything has to be respect. One of the things I talked about right during the workshop was the elements of personal communication. So that's the spoken word, which
Mm.
is the smallest percentage, our body language and our tone, and
Mm.
our nonverbal cues. So if you're able to say things firmly, okay, but with respect, not with no tone of no aggressive tone, no sarcasm, then that's how you communicate your boundaries.
This is so important right now, not just for you and for me, Alex, but also to Justin, my technical director, paging Justin.
Hi,
I know
Justin.
that would have been, yeah, that would have been very helpful to him. See, ha ha ha. All right.
Okay.
I think, Alex, you know what I do is, especially when one has spoken to me in a parang disrespectful tone, I say very nicely na I would appreciate if you communicated with more respect, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's kind of connected to my fourth question. How do we manage people who just get offended with anything? There are people there are people who come into a conversation and they think it's a battle that they need to win. No, parang they
Right.
come in, they're already combative, right? I have my
Yes.
arsenal, I have my weapons. I'm gonna have to
Yes.
win this. But why isn't it possible for the two people to win? You know what I mean?
Right.
Or if it's a
Yes.
group discussion, everyone can come out winning, right? Pero sadly, may mga taong ganun eh. They get offended with everything, right? You say one
Yes.
thing wrong, you ano tawag doon? You're damned if you do, you're damned if you
Damned if
don't.
you
So
don't. Right.
how do we manage people like that, Alex? SOS. SOS.
Actually, to me, I think, we just have to, first of all, accept the fact that regardless of how respectful we are and mindful of how we communicate, somebody is always bound to get offended just because some people are like that. Like you said, may iba, they come into a conversation, they think it's some form of a battle that, they don't even listen anymore. Nagsasalita ka pa lang, sumasagot ka pa lang, they're already thinking of their next answer, right? I mean, but that's not even healthy. So to me, first, let's before we talk about how we manage, already accept that some people, regardless of our efforts, will always be offended, and then let's understand, well, how much do these people matter to me? Because at some point, again, someone's always going to say, ha, parang ang yabang mo naman, or ano naman, parang, because when you change the way you communicate, people notice. And unfortunately, more often than not, the people who are closest to us, they're the ones who are not very ready to accept that change, kasi parang feeling nila, well, that's not how I got to know you, right? But again, to me, if you just tell them, maybe not at that time, because some people, when you're in the heat of the argument, that's really not the time to explain things to them. But just tell them, look, it's never my intention to offend you. I'm doing this precisely because you matter to me. I want you to understand that these things, or like and then talk about your boundaries. This is something that matters to me too. And as a friend, I know that you're going to understand that because you want what's best for me too. And so this is actually going to be very helpful for your relationship in the long term because you're not holding grudges. And that's, again, that's another thing that's very difficult for us Filipinos. Yung parang minsan, akala mo bati na kayo, akala mo okay na, meron pa palang may latak pa na naiwan, which at some point, so many years down the line, yan na, lalabas, di ba? Hugot culture.
Correct. The sumbat.
Yes, the sumbat.
The
Oo.
sumbat. Yeah, you're right, Alex. That was a good reminder, I think, no? Parang no matter how good or loving you are, the thing is, people will come to you from where they are, not from where you are, right? So, if anything, that says a lot about how we can understand them, I guess. But you can be kind and say, this is not for me. Okay,
Right.
you can be kind and say, I will not accept this kind of treatment, right? Not everyone has to like us po, no? Okay lang po kung merong hindi ka feel. Okay?
Okay
So,
lang.
yeah, culture of people pleasers kasi. Yeah. So, I think my fifth question is the last one, and I want to talk briefly about what happened at Kiliawan Farm Resort. I think it's
Mhm.
the start of really good things, no? So, Alex, when you say communication is healthy, what are the how does one define healthy communication? No, whether it's a relationship between two friends or between siblings or between my husband and wife or a
Mhm.
child and the parent, peers especially work. What how can you say na healthy naman yung communication namin eh?
To me, again, and this is from my own personal experience, both in my in the within the family and also in the professional life. I would define healthy communication as when you have parties who are able to openly communicate basically anything and everything given the right time, okay? And I add that and in whatever means, because again, personally, I'm married to an Italian. So ang dami naming and he's 10 years older than me. So there's that cultural barrier. There's, yeah, I would still say language barrier up until now kasi hindi ko pa naman alam lahat ng nuances. There's also a generational issue there. And then, everything else. So sometimes when we have our, when we get into a discussion or a fight or whatever, sometimes I'm not able to deal with it right there and then because when I'm feeling a very big emotion, I still feel in English or in Filipino. And at that time I have to speak in Italian. So sometimes what I do is I tell him, look, I'm not ready to talk about this. And Kai, I'm telling you, when it's a really, big discussion, I write things down because that's how I best process my emotions and that's how I best verbalize things, is that when I'm calm, I'm collected, nobody's waiting for an answer right there and then, and I have the time that I need to be able to process things on my own. Some people think communication should be like instant ganyan na, okay, we're in the moment, let's settle this. But it's not always like that, right? Because
Mm,
again, emotions are involved. And it's the same thing with kids. With Maya, for example, I'm also very careful. Now they say gentle parenting in this era. Parang wala ka nang pwedeng sabihin or gawin kasi baka sila yung sobrang maapektuhan, di ba? Pero I'm I'm also a I'm also a product of my generation. Inabot ko pa yung pinapalo ako eh. I'm also very much for discipline. And I'm sorry, but even if sometimes you feel like you're embarrassed because I call out something, and this is something I do with Maya. I tell her, that was not good behavior. You shouldn't do that. And you can see she's embarrassed, and then she closes in. So I take her aside and I say, look, it's not my intention to humiliate you, but it's important that you grow up understanding this behavior is not okay because you're hurting other people, and by that
yeah.
they're not going to be want to become your friends in the long term. So, pero ang importante, that you have that open channel, whether that means it's going to take a while or it's going to happen in that discussion, it's going to come in installment and not one big conversation. The important thing is I know that there is that possibility. pag meron ng mga blocks na ano, then that's difficult. And blocks happen when you don't deal with things soon enough.
Right, right. Um, I like what you said, Alex, about writing your thoughts down. Because I think more than aside from the importance of communicating with another person or another party, it's how you communicate with yourself, eh. Di ba, the
Yes.
self-talk. So I
Yes.
actually also do that. I write to myself first. Parang,
Okay.
dear Kai, eto ka na naman. Yung mga gano'n. Alam mo na nga na ganito ginagawa mo. Para
Okay.
bang para bang it's my conscience talking to me or me heeding my conscience or free
Okay.
writing,
Okay.
free writing what is already within. And
Right.
then you're right, I also do that. I write to the person I am communicating to.
Right.
Alam mo yun? And hopefully when the opportunity comes to communicate it verbally, na masabi ko din yon in the spirit and intention and the way that I really meant for it to come out. Alam mo yon? But
Yes.
you're right. It's very helpful. In fact,
Yes.
I need to know where my notebooks are kasi baka may makabasa.
Baka nakabasa.
Oo, madami akong gano'ng notebooks, eh. Asan na ba yun? From mga sketchbooks, mga sketchpad kasi sometimes I also doodle to the small ones that I
Okay.
can put in my bag, ganyan.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Yes.
sige.
Yes.
So, thank you, Alex. It's been wonderful having you here on Kaizen. I couldn't think of a better person talaga to have this conversation with. Of course, by this time, si Giselle would be watching. Giselle is Alex's branding consultant. I also want to have Giselle here because she is a very inspiring woman. Okay, more than
Yes.
anything. It's really, really good to be in the company of Wonder Women. Yeah.
Yes.
So Alex, just to end your Philippine visit on Hayden, no, kasi ayaw kong umiyak ka.
Oh
Isipin
my gosh.
natin yung isipin natin yung I guess one of the highlights was the recent event you held at Kiliawan Farm Resort. Can you tell us
Yes.
more about it? And if there are viewers wanting to reach out, for you to conduct that virtually, you're
Hmm.
open, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Okay, so basically that recent event which we had in August 19, it was a workshop. It was my very first face-to-face workshop here in the Philippines. And we had it in Kiliawan Farm Resort here in Ibaan, Batangas. So what we had a small group of women coming from different industries, different professions. I was very fortunate to have a very uh, a very generous group, as you put it, Kaino, because everyone attended the workshop with the intention, yes, of learning, but also sharing, because that's a big part of that workshop depended on how much people were willing to share and, to open up about their own struggles. So it was called Converse with Confidence, basically teaching women how to handle tough talks. We talked
Mm.
about two different frameworks. The first one was on setting and communicating boundaries, and the second one is nonviolent communication. So this is something that I like to do even virtually, because I feel like with just by teaching, just by introducing frameworks, and again, this is not something that I invented. These are all science-based tools that have been proven. I've just adapted them kasi alam ko nga yung struggles natin as Filipinos, being Filipina myself, and being based abroad. So, and I'm very happy because this was my first event. So I honestly, in the beginning, I didn't know what to expect. This was kind of like a test, an experiment for me. But with that result, Kai, I'm really happy to know that, this is something that resonates with a lot of people. So I'm going to be very happy to continue doing this. I'm already thinking about, what the next one is going to be. But yes, if
Yeah.
there's anyone out there who wants to reach out, I can definitely do. I do online workshops, whether that's one on one. As a coach, I work with clients one on one, or I also work with small groups. And of course, if this is something, if it's going to be on large scale, then I think maybe a webinar or workshop is the best setup for this. So there, basically that's it.
How can they contact you, Alex? Where can they message you or email you?
Okay, I am very active on the LinkedIn platform, so just look me up, Alexandra Ganzon. I'm also on Facebook. So again, just typing in Alexandra Ganzon. I also have my own YouTube channel, which I need to get back to. But the easiest way, of course, would be my email address, which is the alexandraganzon at gmail.com. So so that's probably the most straightforward. But if you're on Facebook, just look me up and you'll find me there as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Alex. I feel so inspired to keep having these conversations with you. Maybe that's something we can look into, something more regular. I'm not putting you on the
Absolutely.
spot, but I feel the disclaimer, I mean, I'm not putting you on the spot, but I feel like the energy and exchange in the conversation is really great, right? Thank you again, Alex. Thank you for spending a part of a huge chunk of your last full day in the Philippines with us. I love your family and especially Maya. She's wonderful. If you follow Alex on social media, you will see Maya. She's amazing. And if anything, if Alex is, Alex and I are the same age, eh? So we are of
Yeah,
the same generation,
that's true. That's so true.
right? We do need girls who will grow up into women who are stronger than us now.
Yes.
So that's a wonderful thing how you're raising Maya. She's a beautiful, beautiful kid.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Alex. We'll see you again
Thanks,
soon.
Kai. Thank you. Bye.
Next up on KaiZEN, the Kai Magsanoc podcast.
Kiliawan is, primarily as what we offer is space. Space and rest. When they're here, they feel rested. Sometimes those who stay here for 2 nights or more, they have plans of, maybe lunchtime we'll go out, dinner we'll go, but they end up just staying here and just enjoying the place, the quiet, the serenity of the place, fresh air, quality time with yourself, with your family, with nature.